I have been wanting to cover this movie for so long now, but it just felt like it has been a cursed run of trying to get to see a screening. I went to 2 film festivals and they were both playing this movie, but they just didn't work out for me. And finally, I got the chance to sit down and I saw the TV glow, and I just really want to talk about it with you guys, so let's get into it. So this is the new film from director Jane Schunbrun, who directed We're All Going to the World's Fair, which is an indie film that I have not yet seen. I definitely intend to, but it definitely started sending some waves, and this is their follow-up, I Saw the TV Glow. And I think it had an even larger impact when it premiered at the Sundance Film Festival. And I have seen a wide range of opinions surrounding this movie. People glazing it up, calling it a masterpiece and this new genre of filmmaking. And then people absolutely rejecting the film, not enjoying it at all, getting nothing out of it, and just calling it pretentious trash. This feels to me, after seeing it, the definition of an A24 movie. It felt like they lost their way a little bit with some of these strange movies as they started to chase more prestige filmmaking and Oscars. This feels like something that we would see a few years ago now from A24, and the reactions fit right at home with that. I Saw the TV Glow is a film that I definitely got a lot out of. It's not perfect. It's not the latest masterpiece, but I do think this film is excellent, has a lot to say, and does it in a very unique way that made for an interesting film all throughout its runtime. There are some things about it, though, that you need to know about before you go into it. Otherwise, you might feel a little bit shortchanged. Like, firstly, this was kind of marketed as a horror movie, and this is not that at all. This is maybe a psychological thriller, and I'm still being generous there. Overall, it does feel like a drama with a couple of darker and mysterious elements thrown in there. And that does not ruin the film to me. Its quality isn't dependent on the genre. It's still an excellent drama that evoked a lot of feelings from me, as what these characters experience can feel so tragic throughout. And without spoiling what happens, the way that this thing wraps up was sure a little bit abrupt and something that a lot of people who are not used to the wavelength of certain A24 movies might not appreciate and think it was kind of silly and there was more to tell before it ended. But to me, I thought it was an interesting spot to wrap up the movie and sum up a lot about these characters. I think this film does do an excellent job of communicating a lot of its themes about gender identity, about the way that entertainment kind of forms our own identities, dealing and suppressing certain childhood trauma, not embracing your true self. There's so many things in here that I thought this film handled so well, and I was incredibly moved throughout its entire runtime, to be honest with you. I thought the performances across the board were pretty excellent. Some of them were in a bit of a different key, but this film isn't trying to be formulaic at all, so they fit right at home with this style of filmmaking. And I think Jane Schunbrun does a fantastic job of directing this film. Their style was so unique, turning a lot of scenery that could look very bland, very generic, to something that looks incredible and super cinematic. There is a lot of talent here, and they all display it. I think inherently I found this character incredibly fascinating, and I think the 2 actors that play him, both Ian Foreman and Justice Smith, do fantastic jobs, both giving some of the best performances I've seen from them. I mean, I think this is Ian Foreman's first movie, but Justice Smith I've seen in quite a few things now, and this is by far his greatest performance. I think there's a lot of nuance to this character. There's a lot that he's going through, and it doesn't necessarily need him to explain every single thing that he is going through. There is a lot of that heavy lifting done through a visual flair and this form of storytelling that's all made through certain looks. The way that this character is looking at the screen, the way that this character is describing how he's feeling about himself. you understand pretty quickly what he's going through and what the film is trying to communicate. And some people took that as a negative towards the film. I think that Jane Schunbrun was deliberately trying to tell you those things fairly early on and wanted you to feel smart enough that you figured it out so early that the nuance of this character, what he's going through, is something that hits you in a very profound way. And that, I think, is the purpose of I Saw the TV Glow. It's not there to be some mystery that you need to try and figure out or some kind of horror movie. It is more understanding who these characters are, what they're going through, and how they're dealing with that. And yeah, sure, there are definitely some certain horror elements. I mean, there's this one scene where Justice Smith's character walks into his house and sees his father laying on the couch staring at him. That was one of the creepiest things I have seen in a movie this year, because it went on for so long, it felt so unnerving. There's moments like that that definitely feel creepy and off-putting, but as I said, it's not a full-blown horror movie. It is definitely more of a drama and a little bit of a tragedy. I loved a lot of the visual language and metaphors being presented, especially surrounding escapism and what this TV and this TV show, The Pink Opaque, means to these characters and what it actually represents about them suppressing their identity and escaping their trauma. And without it, they feel so lost because they're so confused and can't really figure out who they are because of certain events that have happened previously in their lives, and how culturally some of these things aren't accepted, causing them to feel so out of place in certain social groups. There's a lot here, and yes, the way it is communicated might not be for you, but this form of interesting storytelling and interesting narrative with these deeply nuanced characters makes for just such a deeply thought-provoking and interesting film that I really can't help but recommend to you. Sure, the ending is a little bit abrupt and feels a little bit strange in terms of where it wants to leave these characters, but giving it some thought, it does make a lot of sense. I don't know how much more story needed to be told apart from this literal conclusion that would give someone who is not used to the wavelength of an A24 strange indie film that kind of satisfaction. But if you've seen a lot of these kinds of movies, it doesn't feel all that out of place, if I'm being honest with you. And that's not coming from a place of looking down on an audience member who might not find that satisfying, because I still do struggle with that at times. I'm just a lot more used to what it is trying to do. And as you explore these kinds of movies, you find that doesn't bother you as much. So all I can say is I just recommend that you go check out some of these movies, because I do think they're worth watching. And this is definitely one of them. And once you're used to that flow and this kind of visual language, when you come back to I Saw the TV Glow and watch it again, you'll probably find that it is quite profound. I do also happen to think there are just some moments that detract a little bit from what it's trying to do. And I do think because it's an hour and 40 minutes long and is trying to say a lot, there are sometimes it starts to suffer under the weight of everything it's trying to say. There was one monologue that I thought was well acted and well shot, but it just didn't quite hook me like the rest of the film did. I wasn't quite as emotionally invested in that moment. Even though it is trying to say a lot and understand what it's going for, it doesn't quite connect with me the way that the rest of the film did, because this movie relied so heavily on that visual language that when it starts going into monologues and talking at you, it doesn't quite fit quite as well as the rest of the movie does. And I do think that's a bit of a flow problem, because it is trying to tell a narrative one certain way and then definitely flips. But it did feel quite jarring in that sequence to me personally. It might not for you, but that's just how I felt. As a whole, I Saw the TV Glow is an excellent film that I highly recommend to you guys. Yes, it's unique. Yes, it's not perfect. I don't think it is a masterpiece, but it is definitely a thought-provoking film with lots to say. I think the first 45 minutes especially are utterly fantastic. This film is worth your time. And as a score, I'm going to give I Saw the TV Glow a 4.5 out of 5 because this film is excellent. And those are my thoughts towards I Saw the TV Glow. If you've seen the movie, let me know what you think about it in the comments below. And you probably have. I'm really late to the party here. I'm probably the last person that was interested in this movie to have seen it. But I'm so glad I finally have. Love to hear your thoughts. Remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.